everybody. Welcome once again to a fresh installment of A Rebel Without Applause, coming to you as I always do from this my nutshell of infinite space, my television studio apartment right here in the wood of the holly, under the sign overlooking, yes, you know what, the COVID-addled yet still somehow enchanted land of law. And today I have an extremely special guest and, more importantly, a good friend. He's a native son of East Lansing, Michigan, and you've seen him over the years, most prominently on the television series 30-something, but also West Wing, Entourage, Sports Night, The Loudest Voice. In movies, he's been on Sneakers, Field of Dreams, Revenge of the Nerds, Quiz Show, and most importantly, a terrific romantic mockery that yours truly wrote and directed called The Solar Opposite. His life is as rich as his resume, which is a considerable accomplishment considering how much he's done. And he's with me here tonight, Timothy Busfield. Welcome, Timothy. First question for you. Tell me about the brand new series you're on, For Life, which I believe is on ABC.
Yeah, we're back on tonight. Tonight we had the last episode was in December, and we pick up tonight. It's the second season ABC show. With Nicholas Pinnock and Indira Varma from Game of Thrones. And it's a really, really fantastic show, actually, about the criminal justice system, getting that wrestled down. It's a story of a guy who's falsely accused, sent to prison. While he's in prison, he becomes a lawyer, based on a true story about a guy named Isaac Wright. Then he gets out, and helping him get out is me. And I become his mentor. I'm a former state senator, alcoholic, public defender, prosecutor, whose life had just fallen apart, and he wanted to do some good. And so he goes to this guy, Aaron Wallace, and says, I want to help you. And we become great friends. And then now we're partners in a law firm, and it's a fun show. It's a legal show.
I'm hearing shades of The Verdict in Paul Newman's character as you describe it.
First of all, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just such an underrated, great film. David Mamet, script. I think Sidney Lumet might have directed. I'm not sure if it was Lumet. Just a great script. Yeah, I mean, he's he's a troubled guy who's prone to substance issues. I think next year we have a surprise ending, and I think you'll see him get more into that next year.
Now, you're the first person I've really spoken to who's really worked during the pandemic. And what's that experience like?
Well, it's great because the directors are wearing plastic shields and masks, so you don't have to listen to them.
Oh, that's great.
You just nod. And it's a great note, and they can't really hear you. You know, it's really interesting. I've long been a fan of Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm and the style of filmmaking, which is more improvisational, and really liked those shows, Parenthood, who did that, and Friday Night Lights, where they really actors show up on the set and everything's marked and everything's lit and they go. And it's like that here. You know, we don't rehearse with the masks on. We might a little bit, but for the most part, it's mask off. Hi, I'm Tim, and go. And I like it. I like warming up on film. You know, you never know when you're going to hit something. And Spielberg had said last year, a couple of years ago, that he was sort of done rehearsing. Didn't want to do it anymore. Didn't want to do the big rehearsals. You know, maybe show the blocking and talk through it, but not overwork the material. And that's one of the upsides of working in this fashion. I mean, the testing is ridiculous, Billy. I get tested 4 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week.
Oh my God.
There's certain zones that have to be cleared for the actors to come through because we don't wear masks naturally. So how they take care of a set, and then when those masks come off, how many people are in the set. On our show, it's just the dolly grips in the room and all the camera work's being done remotely. So, you know, there's new things. And I don't think they're all bad. You know, there's some good that's come of it.
Is there a partition between you, the actors, and the crew, like any kind of clear partition? Are they in different rooms? Like
they're masks. They have to wear masks.
Well, the improvisational stuff is interesting to me because I remember the last time I saw you was when I went to a screening of that hilarious movie, underrated, underseen, One Smart Fella, which to me I just sat there right next to you in Burbank at the Lemleys just cracking up. And in a way, it seemed like it was connected to The Solar Opposite. It was the same kind of a guy who's kind of like his self-awareness is sort of dim with women. And you did that so brilliantly in this.
Well, we tell stories about you write what you know, right?
Yeah.
I can screw up a marriage and a relationship better than anybody. So if I could share how dumb I've been in my life, and my wife was great in it, Melissa Gilbert.
Yes.
She was great. Yeah, it's fun. We went in. I challenged the camera operator and the DP. I was hanging out with them on a Friday night after we wrapped, and I said we can make a movie in a week. And I was at their place at the beach in Wilmington, and I said we're gonna make a movie here next Sunday. And they laughed, and I said no, I'm serious. And then got Laura Innes to come be in it, and Belle Schaus, who was in the show, and Melissa. And I just wrote an outline really of a guy trying to convince his wife that it's a good thing. It can be an upside to having your husband dump you. You got to look at the brights.
What was the movie with where he cheats or he goes away on the week? It was with Grodin.
Oh yeah, Heartbreak Kid.
Heartbreak Kid, where he's just saying, no, it's a good. He's just trying to convince her,
Yeah, just trying to convince her everything's all right. And they also, and I know Neil Simon, who wrote it. Like he said, I did a Broadway play, so I got to spend some time with Neil, and he said that he loved that he's getting up to go be on the boat like at 6 a.m.
Right.
And his wife was like going, where are you? And he says that he's there. He's got to go to court over something. And she goes, it's 6 a.m. And he goes, yeah, they open early so they can get out in the sun.
Yeah, right.
Just the lies, just one lie after another of stupid man behavior.
My favorite moment in that movie is when Edward Albert shows up at the hotel and there's Jewish people there, and he calls it, I don't like the element. That was a term you used to hear, like racist code. I'm just not comfortable with the element here,
He is so great. That slow burn he does. He just hates Charles Grodin. Just hates him. Yeah, Eddie Albert's great in that.
It's funny that Neil Simon, he's wrote so many great plays, but as I think back about it, I think some of his best writing is in that movie.
There's a certain datedness to Neil's stuff now, and a lot of people have tried to do it, and him and Herb Gardner and those guys that, wrote Broadway plays in the 50s and 60s and stuff. It was a different language. It was a different, the language of theater was different. It was proscenium, and it just didn't quite hold up. And I think in some of his movie work, Goodbye Girl and Heartbreak Kid, I think that's some of Neil's best writing. Of course, I think Brighton Beach Memoirs, which I was in the original production of, is an exceptional piece of writing. However, and I'll say watching him rewrite and cut towards the end around, if there weren't laughs coming at the right amount of pace, Neil would cut stuff. And that piece, although a great play, a lot of the stakes were I thought, cut out of it because they weren't getting laughs. And Neil got a little bit afraid. It was really interesting to watch him pull out some of the conflict stuff that, especially with the dad and his heart attack, and just watching a legend like that work and such a body of work. We can be critical of some of their hits because they also have other hits that you can't really criticize. So
yeah, I love the one with it's like every actor probably did a scene from it in acting class. It was with Jane Fonda and Robert Redford, that great
Barefoot in the Park.
Barefoot in the Park. 6 days does not a week make. I don't know how many times I saw that in an acting class.
Yeah, a lot of that. And I saw my stepson do that play.
Oh, really?
A couple of years ago in Michigan, yeah.
Talking about playwrights who've transitioned to movies, and another example for me, just as we're just rapping about this, of course, Arthur Miller wrote Death of a Salesman, A View from the Bridge, some of the most iconic pieces of theater, in the American 20th century. But for my money, just for the pure writing, and maybe because it's just my sensibility skews towards the cinema, was The Misfits is fantastic. That the movie that takes place in Reno and those cowboys.
I know that's Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe, right?
And Montgomery Clift and Lee Wallace,
right?
And Thelma Ritter and McCarthy. It's just fantastic. I was doing stand-up a couple of years ago in Reno, across the street from the courthouse where they shot the first scene because he's there for a divorce, and I just described the whole thing, and nobody from Reno even knew what I was talking about.
No, That would be Reno.
Yes, that would be Reno. I got in trouble there because it was like I was doing Trump material, and I people walked out on me, but whatever.
You think?
Yeah. I'll tell you this.
Your Trump materials. I mean, I listened to the changing of the guard, little piece that you put out. Was that you playing the clarinet at the top of that? I couldn't tell if that was.
Oh yeah, it's always me. Yeah, it's always me.
Yeah, you're not bashful about bashing. Even if you're not a Trump fan, people might find your stuff too rough.
Well, I'll tell you this story. This is not too long after the PVP, which I call Putin's vice president, ascended to the Oval Office when he got free housing on Pennsylvania Avenue. And I said it was a very conservative place, and I said, I don't want to offend any of my liberal friends, but I go, and I take a big pause. I go, Obama was a nightmare. And I just let it sit there. And then people would go, yeah. And then the racists would sort of out themselves in the audience. And then I went, if you were a comedian, I go, but I thought he was pretty good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you felt out the crowd and you knew what you had. That's smart.
Yeah, and then I outed the racists because they would just go, yeah. And then I go, I do feel, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like a weight has just lifted and let that imbecile just recede into the past.
I do. I feel that. However, I don't. I feel like I took the trash from the trash can just to the room before it goes out to the trash can outside. I feel we're in that middle area because I don't know if he's done yet. You know what I mean? And I don't know how much we got rid of him. If the Republicans allow him to run again, which I think is just criminal. I can't imagine a guy trying to overthrow an election and then being able to go back and run again. I don't care what party you are. If the Democrats had behaved that way and said he threw a race. Look, Gore said that I want to challenge Florida, where he lost by 500 votes in a state run by George W. Bush's brother.
Correct.
So to say I want to check Florida and lose an election by 500 votes and then not contest it in the way that Trump contested it, he didn't say the system was bad. He just said, I want to do a recount, which he was entitled to do in Florida. Horrific behavior. And the fact that the Republicans are okay if that guy comes back, and even though Trump has an incredibly low approval rating, it was at 20-something%, I think he's going to lose a lot of his base. I don't think he's going to help the Republican Party. And people didn't like seeing such a schmuck. He behaved so poorly at the end that even his own Republican Party, I think the voters had just kind of had enough, a lot of them.
Yeah, I don't see, with respect to this impeachment trial coming up, any Republicans' interest in not just flushing him down the toilet. After all, there's some very ambitious people in that Senate that want to run for president, would like to have him out of the way.
Ted Cruz wants Trump's base. He wants that base, but we still got to see what happens with Cruz and Hawley. And I think that, look, the Republicans are not saying that you don't have a case. What they're just saying is that it's not constitutional, which means they know, and the evidence they have is really bad.
Oh, yeah.
And all these whistleblowers that were people that from his base that are saying, I went there and did what I did because Trump wanted it done. That evidence is rolling over so strongly that he's going to have a great case. And then when the Republican Party don't make it so he can't run again, I really think the Republican Party is going to lose a tremendous amount of support because whatever people thought during the election, after the election, his approval went down because he handled it like a poor sport.
Yeah.
And we don't like poor sports. We just don't like them.
We don't. Every weekend we watch one team win and one team lose in the NFL, and you don't see those games challenged. They're just, we lost. We'll do better next week. I don't care who you are.
Even when there's huge, and we've seen it so often, huge officiating gaffes, the interference calls that weren't there, face mask calls that weren't face masks. I mean, we've seen games and careers collapse in sports
Yeah.
And even though they might say that the guy made the wrong call, nobody goes back and changes the results. That's not, and we're so driven by sports. That was, we like a good bit of competition, but we like the winner to be the winner. And, I think that's one reason boxing has gone away. Not only is it just a bludgeoning sport that has lost a lot of artistry in it, at least to the fans, but I think people get sick of seeing decisions go the wrong way. I know for me that's hurt me a lot, and I don't watch boxing anymore. As I end up at the end going, that guy didn't win.
Yeah.
The other guy won that fight. How can you do that? So people,
Changes.
we like a winner.
There was a time when you could ask me who the top 10 heavyweights were, and I could rip off that list like the Dodger lineup. If you asked me who the top 10 heavyweights are, I don't know. It was like, I don't even, who's champion? Like, Klitschko?
Don't know. Nobody. I don't know any of them. And then even with MMA, I just don't watch that.
Ugh, I hate it.
I can't watch that stuff, and I can't watch the boxing much anymore. And a lot of that was just the officiating. I just felt like I just think it was bogus.
I've taken some pleasure late lonely nights watching ESPN on demand, watching classic fights. Like there's a couple that I saw with Ali, just post Olympics. He's this scrawny little. But his artistry, his speed, it's actually beautiful to watch,
Yeah. That era, that Ali and that, there was an era in when we were in our 20s, there was a welterweight. There was an era of welterweights where it was so brilliant with Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Thomas Hearns, and Bazooka Lamone, and Pino Cuevas, and Hagler was a middleweight when they came, but they all ended up fighting each other. And there was a lot of artistry. I was at the Hearns-Hagler fight. I've never seen anything like those 3 rounds. Everybody on their feet screaming the entire time. I don't think anybody sat until Hagler knocked him out, which was a brilliant experience. Yeah, Thomas Hitman Hearns.
Yeah, that's funny. Now, you played a lot of baseball, and I have recollections of playing with you in some of those adult hardball leagues years ago. I remember you had a pretty good curveball and a little sneaky fastball. We had a lot of fun in those days.
Played a lot of baseball. When I was a kid, I had my choice between, my mom said, you can go to Mystic Lake and canoeing, and I'd done it once and said, I'm good. The mosquitoes are horrible. Or you can go to, Mickey Owen Baseball School, which is a place I'd found. So I would spend my summers at a baseball school in Missouri, and I became a counselor. So I would play sometimes 75, 100 games over the summer because I would play with the counselors and the 17, 18-year-olds. And even if I was 15, 16, then I would play with that age group. And then I would umpire Little League, and I'd run the batting cage. And, I had such great instruction that I really was taught how to act like a baseball player. I couldn't actually play the game, Billy. I couldn't, but I could act like I could stand like a baseball player. I made a lot of teams just by them going, he looks like a ball player. We should probably.
That's half the game in sports, is look like you can play the part. There's a little bit of acting in baseball too. Yeah, I grew up in the Valley, as you know, and I played Taft High School.
You're a good ball player. You're a good ball player.
I could act it. I could act,
I played last year. I played up until, it might have been last year. I'm not sure if it was I think it was last year. I'd played the year before for the Long Island Cubs, and we won a championship, and I went 6-0 as a starting pitcher.
Fantastic.
And we won the Long Island men's over 45 league. And then I played in the over 35 league. And then I tore, I had a capsule tear, and I had to go I went to the Yankee doctor, and he did the MRIs, and he showed me an MRI, and then he showed me a AAA ball player who had the exact same injury. And he said, he's done. The kid's done. He said, I don't know what you're going to do. And I was like, I'm good. If I have to get surgery to go back and play, then I won't play anymore. But still was able to have a good time. Not so well against the under. It was a 35. It was a 25 and over. It was a 25. It might have been at St. John's University, which was my last game. And those guys they weren't having too much trouble with that. That curveball and that sneaky fastball. You said they were. I was batting practice. They were literally standing like on the edge of the mound. They're like,
Okay.
it's you throw the ball so slow, I can't get close enough to you.
I had a lot of fun, I used to like I had like a doubleheader every Sunday and then but it took me for like by Wednesday late afternoon before I was out of pain.
When I played in Sacramento, I played 9 years with a team. From 92 to 2001, I played with a nationally ranked semi-pro team, a really great, some years we were nationally ranked, and we actually won the Western Baseball Association my very last game with them. And I was pitching, but we would play against the San Francisco Seals, where DiMaggio played, the Fontanettis, the Reno Stars. We were the college kids, and semi-pro baseballs generally in America. College kids come home from playing college ball and they play on a local team.
Right.
And that local team is usually made up of ex-pro ball players and the better college ball players. And I had 50 starts with them as a pitcher for 9 years and was a headliner. And I had two ex-major leaguers pitch in the pitching staff. One was a rookie of the year in '76, Butch Metzger with the Padres. And sitting between two ex-major leaguers with an open mind and being an amateur ball player, but with a strong arm and the ability to spin the ball, I learned well how to make the ball move. Boy, they were, I just to have that for 9 years, have two guys between you talking to you about how that guy, you set him up the last time, what would you pitch in this situation, that kind of stuff, that higher level of baseball, that it was really a great experience for me.
Now, was that the Sacramento Solons? Because I think that was the minor league team.
That was the minor league team at one point. No, it was the Sacramento Smokies.
Okay.
The coach had played pro ball and was from the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. So
one of my best friends, my old college roommate, he lives in Marin, and he bought and ran a minor league baseball team. They had like an independent league in Marin County, and he had like 6 years of that. And he, the best thing that happened, they have some kid and they get signed by single A Yankees or something. They get plucked out of these independent leagues. He had a blast doing that.
That would happen. I was offered $500 a month with Saskatchewan in the Northern League after striking out 9 of the first 10 ball players in a game. And I might have been stoned. I can't remember exactly. I'd have been to a wedding the night before, was completely hungover, and said, I got to find I can't make it. I'm just throwing up all day. I got a doubleheader tonight.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I was just sort of breezed through the first 5 innings and ended up getting a call the next morning from Larry Manuel, our manager, saying, I can get you $500 a week. Saskatchewan wants you. You'd have to go right away. And I was like, that's so sweet, but I can't.
It sounds like a really good movie.
It would be.
Instead of a jock trying to break into show business, it's an actor trying to break into jockocracy. It's the reverse.
Yeah.
Speaking of baseball and movies, you were in Field of Dreams.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
That was a great script. That was one of those where I didn't know. It was the end of the first year, 30-something, and there were, I would get offers to do stuff, and especially having had the Nerds movie, and that came along, and she didn't say what part. And I read it, and I thought, well, do they want me to be a ball player, or do they want me for, I knew it was an independent movie, or they want me to read for Kevin's part? And I read it, and I was like, you know what? The brother. I want to play the brother. I could really help the audience sort of leap over me into the fantasy. I think I know how to do that. And it worked out great. It was a great script, brilliant script. Like fairy dust coming off each page, every page was like perfect. Same thing with A Few Good Men. When I did A Few Good Men on Broadway, every single page was like, oh my God, I know exactly how to say this. I can't believe it. This is a brilliant script. And then of course, with so many more Sorkin scripts that I was a part of, where there's fairy dust on every page. You're just going, oh my God, this is just the best writing ever.
I remember reading the Kinsella novel, the Field of Dreams novel, and I think I read this.
Shoeless Joe. It's called Shoeless Joe.
Yeah, he was, of course, the Black Sox.
That was the name of the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
W.P. Kinsella.
Kinsella, yeah. And I remember reading that, and I think then, oh, God, they're going to make a movie of it. Man, maybe I could play one of those baseball players. I'll just come out of the corn and throw something. But I remember...
You were too good. You were too good a ball player. That baseball, that movie's horrible. And all those guys were great. Art LaFleur, those guys are great. Stevie Easton, they could play ball, but that's not what he was going for. And Ray Liotta really wasn't a ball player. So, and the corn was only like 250 feet away, and we were painting the grass green. We'd have loved to have you.
Oh, I
Some
would
of the
love to get
ball
in.
players were like, there were a lot of actual semi-pro and ex-pro ball players. One guy, the guy who's pitching, there's a moment in the movie where Phil Robinson and John Lindley had said, we want to do something when you arrive around home plate. And like an idiot, not knowing I was being talked into a stunt, was like, well, why don't I walk in front of the plate and they'll throw it and they'll swing. And the director was like, yeah, like that. Thought for a minute, why would I commit to that? So then we practiced it, and the guy was a minor league pitcher, and I said, can you just throw me a couple and throw a couple to the catcher and let me see what, and I could tell right away that he could play ball. So I felt okay. But then I walk in front of home plate and he throws it, and I don't react because I can't see the ball players. And around take 3, Phil calls me over, and John Lindley, the DP, and said, we're panning with you, but once you get to the pitcher, he's already in his motion. We want to see him go into his motion. And I said, that's going to make that a lot easier for me to get hit in the face. But okay. And we did the next take, and I just crossed home plate and then just broke down shimmying, and the crew laughed and applauded. They really liked that I was doing this stunt. And then I added a hey on the next take, and that was the one he used. But we had some good ball players, and that guy was a minor league ball player. He didn't hit me and was putting it in the same spot every time. And that's how they rounded out the actors in that movie. Frank Whaley playing a guy who'd made it all the way to the big leagues, not possibly. And the swing he has, and the fly ball that he hits, it's 120 feet to right field. It's not great baseball. Neither's The Natural, which I consider actually is my favorite baseball movie.
Yeah.
The baseball movie I did, Little Big League, however, has the best baseball in it of any baseball movie, because we have Randy Jones, Ken Griffey, Rafael Palmeiro, Paul O'Neill. I mean, we have and the team itself, the actors in the team. We had Kevin Elster, former Dodger, former Met. We had Bull Durham. We had really good ball players.
Speaking of Bull Durham, a guy I played with in high school, Kevin Kennedy, who was a catcher and a manager. He was a senior. I was, 10th grade, and he was like a star catcher. Oh, my God. He got drafted. And he never quite made the majors as a player, but I believe Bull Durham was in some fashion inspired out of his career.
He stayed around long enough in the minors to rack up some records. Yeah, you don't really want records in the minors.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the guy who lasted long enough to have the home run record, although I'm sure it's great. But, you want to, if you can get to AAA ball, you want to make it all the way up there.
I imagine. Probably the greatest actor, played a catcher, banged the drum slowly, Robert De Niro. And as great an actor as he was, he looked like he didn't get past Pony League, when he was on the field.
It's tough, and people don't tend to care. I mean, you look back at the guys that played ball in the, Gary Cooper and guys like that, they forgive it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The audience will just forgive that. They know that guy probably couldn't do it. And yet it's not one of those sports you can really just pick up and learn how to throw a ball at 18 or 19 and look like a ball player. And,
8 Men Out, another one about the Black Sox. That looked like a showbiz softball team,
It did. Those guys were all really great actors. And I love the movie. But as a baller, I don't really.
It looked like the softball team in Central Park, It was like.
It was.
Now, you just directed a movie, I noticed. I wasn't even aware of this. You did this in Michigan with Jeff Daniels, guest artist.
But Jeff and I grew up about 45 minutes, 50 minutes apart from each other, did not know each other growing up. But when I got to New York and became a company member at Circle Repertory Company, which was Lanford Wilson, Paul McGilliard, Tally's Folly, 5th of July, that writer, and Sam Shepard was in the company there. And
Fool for Love, I remember seeing that down there. Yeah.
Fool for Love, there. Brilliant. So many great plays those guys did, especially. And I mean, it was a great environment. But we were in the Broadway Show League. And Jeff was the first baseman and I was the shortstop, and we became buddies. And then when in 2000, maybe 11, I moved to Michigan. I was directing and producing a lot and didn't feel the need to be in LA. And I'd lived in Sacramento from 86 to 2002, 2003 when I moved to LA. And I just was I'm not a big fan. I'm not from LA. So if I'm not working, I don't like to be in LA. I feel like I'm working at the mall and living at the mall. It just gets a little much. Mm-hmm. So I moved to Michigan, got a house on the lake, and then I met Melissa, re-met her. We'd met before earlier in our lives and said, hey, good news. I hope I dig you. I think you're fantastic. The bad news is I live in Michigan. And she said, no, get me out of here. This is great. So she moved to Michigan. I introduced her to Jeff. Jeff and Melissa and I started a company and said, why can't we just produce our own stuff and use our kids and why can't we try mom and pop? And we sold a pilot to Showtime. And then this movie came up and Melissa had it funded in about 20 minutes. Our budget was only $300,000. And Jeff was on one of his plays, based on one of his plays called Guest Artist, about a story about Lanford Wilson, who had come to Michigan to his theater. Jeff had commissioned him to a play, and Jeff drove down to Toledo to get him because Lanford wouldn't fly. And Jeff went to get him from the train in Toledo, and Lanford was wasted, and he hadn't written a word of the play. So the movie is sort of that experience in Jeff's life and what that was like for him. And Jeff plays Lanford Wilson, and we had a nice cast all from his theater, except for Erica Slezak, who started us off, a multi-Emmy Award-winning daytime star. And we shot it for $300. And by the time we got through with post and music and every other touch, it was probably about $380. You can see it you can get it on your DVR. Look up Guest Artist or Jeff Daniels, and
I want to say
we're there.
Mr. Deeds goes back to town. It sounds like it.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, Jeff was amazing. Boy, he knew because he wrote it. But just as an actor, we shot in 7 days, so we rolled. A lot of it takes place in a train station, and we shot a 35-minute take where the cameras were on dollies, the poor boom guy, but we rehearsed it like a play, and the whole opening right for like the first 35 minutes we just kept rolling. And that was a great experience for the actors. It was great to be able to show the crew a run through of the movie, with the exception of the few little pieces that we built out and put on a train or in another place. But for the most part, everything in the train station, we ran it for the crew. Showed them the thing and then went into it. It was really kind of a great experience.
Now, did Daniels do the part as well as write it on the stage?
Yeah, Jeff wrote it, acted it. He was there every day, ready to go. Great attitude, really great acting. A young kid, and it was a stage manager at his theater, and Thomas Macias does a great job as well. He never really acted before. And Jeff said he's the guy, and I looked at him and was like, well, I was thinking, somebody like a leading man, kind of, not your stage manager. And then I read him and spent time with him and was like, you know what, he's the guy. And he turns in a nice performance. My son, Willie, who is one of Chanel's director of photography and was working in Paris a lot, but still is now a big fashion director of photography, was the director of photography. And Jeff's son, both his boys, Luke and Ben did the music, and our son Michael, the youngest one, was a stand-in for Jeff. So it was really mom and pop and in control. He really didn't have the interference of a big budget movie, which I really loved.
And what was the festival experience like? Because I saw where you guys were in a lot of the regions.
Well, I've done the festival experience. I'm not a fan of the festival experience. I think they're great and they're important and they're a great place to find talent, but they're usually made up by people that like odd movies, that don't have to work.
Tell me about it.
For them to be popular in the festivals. And a few good, the first one, One Smart Fellow, won a lot of festivals. And I went and experienced it with that. And, we won several festivals, and Guest Artist also won several festivals, but I was sort of done. The one performance Jeff went to see in New York, they ended up showing it like on a sheet in some small room. And he was like, what? what was, I'm not going to the festivals anymore. But, we had I had a great time doing it and a great time making it. And I felt very fortunate. So.
I had a very similar experience with the Solar Opposite with the film festivals. It was there. I mean, if it was filmed, on a credit card and looked, like you could see the sprocket holes and the boom was in, those things seemed to, I thought, gain favor. I'll never forget, someone interviewed me about the Solar Opposite and said, well, why wasn't, it was received beautifully, and people say, well, why wasn't the movie in Sundance? And I said, well, they didn't have a category for heterosexual romantic comedy. So, just, and I got quoted and I was told I was homophobic and, the whole thing. But yeah, and having made this movie, I'm looking at the poster across my room and I'm seeing my favorite shot of you and Chris.
Maloney.
Yeah.
Ian Maloney. I like that scene too. Yeah.
Oh, so fun. But I could never have imagined that someone called me the other day. I said, oh man, I just saw your movie. Somebody I'd met recently. And they go, oh, I really liked it. And I go, where'd you see it? And they go, on my phone. And I was like, could you imagine like making a movie and thinking that someday people will be watching it on your phone? I mean, I just can't even like.
I got to tell you, I'm a really good actor on the phone, Billy.
You're doing a great job.
My acting, I'm never too big.
Yeah.
When my face is the size of a little pinky nail, like when that's as big as it gets, man, I'm Robert De Niro. I'm up there with Streep and De Niro on the phone.
Yeah.
But he's so small, you can't see anybody's face.
And all the work you did on the framing and you spent all this money on production design, and it's like
I know it's there. Well, I can't see it.
One of my hopes is after the vaccine and people start to kind of resume lives, hopefully within a year or so, that people want to go back to the movies. I miss the movies. That's sort of.
You miss the movies, but you bring up a really interesting point, which I think is they have there are certain elements of filmmaking that have improved dramatically, particularly the acting.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of decades, really with the Stanislavski method system into American film actors bringing their performances down, and then European actors who are trained really well. The problem is, and you see the problem at every level now, and I really got this when I started executive producing, is that those executives that are running things now, they're not readers. They're looking to mix and match. Everything is about mix and match and striking gold. They'll read and they'll say this bump for us, or this isn't set up as well. But it's not like the writers and the producers at the studio level or at the higher levels of TV. They're not looking at a script saying, I can't find the end of the second act. Where is it? That needs to be stronger. They don't talk about how to tend to the audience as far as the arc of the story. They talk about grabbing the audience in little spots. But they don't have the vision for the whole that you might have got with a Louis B. Mayer, you might have got with a Selznick, you might have got with David Brown, you might have got with those legendary studio guys who were book readers. They didn't watch a lot of TV when the film, and they read novels. Then they would figure out how to make that novel work as a movie. Versus, we got Jim Carrey, we got Jennifer Aniston. Let's go on production. The last thing which actually gets cleaned up is the text. And they'll hire Jennifer, will say, I want my writer. It's not funny enough. And Jim Carrey will say, so by the time you get there, the stuff that would have been nixed in a studio system that put out Gone with the Wind and so many of the great Turner classic movies, they're just not involved. They say put people together, but they're not involved in what ultimately the audience is there for, which is the ride all the way to the ending. So that last third of so many films just don't work. And then they go back in and they say, change the music and this and that. They really Rubik's Cube and pull these movies apart. So by the time we go to the movie and we see a movie, it tends to not work. Whereas at Marvel, for instance, that has tremendous success, they allow the Russo brothers to make that movie. They'll write it, they'll rewrite to what those guys want, but they really honor that relationship on what that film is and work with that director on what they want it to look like. And you really get a sense of that, not that they turn over the material, and then Marvel says, now we're going to make what we want out of it. That teamwork is strong, and that's one of the reasons you see those films working beginning to end. If you like them or not, don't like them, they seem to be making the most amount of money, and they're making sure that they play all the way to the very end. And a lot of films that we see today just don't have the supervision over the writing of the text and the development of the text to make sure that the whole experience works. And it's a problem.
The great producers, you see those names on a lot of the movies, whether it's at Warner Brothers or whatever, they were great producers, they understood story. If you watch, for example, any Billy Wilder movie, everything's set up and pays off.
They would mix match directors on projects. They'd bring in George Cukor for a couple weeks. Gone with the Wind, they were writing as they went, but it was the head of the studio that was overseeing it all.
Right.
It was the head of the studio making sure that wanted that book made, this scene, that scene. They were storytellers, those early guys, and they could crank them out, but they had to have a beginning, middle, and an end. They didn't just peter out as much as you see movies just sort of peter out.
They run out of gas. Yeah. Well, that movie had a lot of middles, a long middle, Gone with the Wind, and it's suffering today because it's now getting reclassified as a movie that celebrates the lost cause and the Confederacy and, the romance of it all. And it's actually, I have problems with that movie historically. And one of the things you mentioned earlier about Trump and what his reach is going forward, I kind of look backwards because all you have to do is look back to the Civil War to realize that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people marched willingly and thrillingly to their death to defend slavery. And the people are still here. It doesn't go away.
They're the same people. We're seeing it in the Senate, and we're seeing it in Congress. There's that same crowd that seem ignorant to the fact that, we were raised to be racist. We were actually in America raised to be racist. Now, people are going to say that's crap. Nobody ever told me to be racist, but it was in the programs. It was in Bewitched. It was in Andy Griffith. It was in every story where anybody of color was portrayed stereotypically, and not given the ball to be a lead or a central character. Commercials, products we bought, all of it separated people based on demographics and every other way. My family's from Texas. I would say that they were very moderate. My grandparents were both Democrats and wrote for the Austin American-Statesman.
Oh, wow.
However, growing up in a Southern family in the North and then go to the South, everybody'd say, you're the Yankee. And they would say, they might use the N-word, and you're like, you can't use that. I can't say that. I'll get smacked with a belt if I say that. How can you say that? And how can you say it like it's natural? And maybe I didn't say anything to him. Maybe I just backed off because that's where I was raised. Don't make waves in that or allow that bad behavior to happen. But, in this country, all around the world, but particularly here, because of that Civil War, the divide is so strong. Whereas multiracial relationships in much of Europe are not as big a deal because they didn't have the Civil War. It wasn't as foreign. It wasn't so white as America was, so it's kind of disgusting.
Yeah, I've done a deep dive into that history lately with some of the authors that I've interviewed.
Well, look, we did our job. Melissa and I over the summer committed to a podcast.
I saw that.
We were there and we tried our best way to talk about other things for a great deal of the hour, but the show was generally there to try to encourage any fans we might have and touch on every episode. Please vote blue. Get this idiot out. And, you did that as well. And I think there were a lot of us out there putting our voices out there to help the 80 million kind of step forward. And I don't want to go backwards, but I don't see it happening. Really, honestly, we might go slow, but I think humanity in America, even though 75 million voted for him, I don't think all 75 million of those people are racists. I don't. There might be conservative, but I don't think he's going to have the strength he had, even if he came back to run. I think it's just going to split the party. And I think that's going to be a problem for them.
Yeah, another possibility going forward with this impeachment trial is that, okay, maybe they can't get the extra 17 Republicans to get the 67 votes, but it might peel off a few disenchanted and morally violated Republicans, of which there are a few, to caucus independently. And then all of a sudden, bingo, it's not 50-50 waiting on Kamala Harris to throw the
Right.
tiebreaker. Now, didn't Melissa run for Congress? Did I see that somewhere?
Melissa did. Melissa was in. We got to Michigan, and she went and helped the a guy running for governor. He didn't get elected, but she helped him out. And then they came back and said, "Do you want to become will you run for the 8th district?" Which was a red seat that they were hoping she would flip. And she was cruising, and I think she would have won it, but she couldn't turn her head by August because of the neck surgery, which she just finally had the disc replaced. They did another neck surgery on her disc surgery, but she was unable to continue on to do the stuff. She was on pain meds and really just grinding it and unable to turn. And she had to back out after she got the nomination for the 8th district. She backed out, and we were both really bummed, but it was a good call.
Was she from Michigan also?
No, but she lived there then. She came with me. She moved with me.
So you have the Michigan roots, and you didn't want to run. That wasn't something that interested you.
Are you kidding? I don't know anything about politics. I don't want to be a politician. I don't really know it or understand it or like it, despite being on the West Wing and having the point of view of them of somebody who was supposed to have all of those elements. If Trump said one thing, it was drain the swamp. And like a lot of people, if I'd have been even more concerned, I would have voted for him based on that. Mm-hmm. I would have voted for him to see, let's mix it up and see what's happening here. Like a lot of people, I think, did originally. They voted for him, said, why not? Let's check it out. And now, the swamp, it looks like quicksand. Again, it looks like everything's just going to get stuck in mud. And I think there is a swamp there. And I'm not necessarily, I don't hold somebody because they're a senator or a congressman or a mayor. I don't hold that extra bit of respect for them that maybe I had when I was growing up, when people say, I want to be the president. Or my dad was in politics, was the county chairman for the Republican Party back for when Romney was there. And I just don't like it. Yeah. And I don't like politics. And it was fun on the West Wing being the guy that goes, you're idiots. Right, so that was my take on the administration. But no, I would never run for class president, senior class president in my high school. That was it for me.
Okay, that's a tough.
The last position.
Melissa was president of the Screen Actors Guild. She wouldn't have been the first American president to have had that position. So
she wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why run? Yeah. Ronald Reagan already did it.
Yeah, that first was taken.
So there's no point in her doing it. She'd have been great. And here she's got a group called True Blue Dems here. With Amber Tamblyn and a couple other people up here, and they get together and, try to influence, it's very red up here in upstate New York. We're out in the country, and the Grossingers and all those great clubs, the Catskills clubs went away. They really took a lot of the business with them and took a lot of the entertainment world, which is often liberal. That's not here anymore.
That reminded me of the great movie, The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz, which
one of my favorite films ever, Richard Dreyfuss, one of my favorite films ever.
Oh, God, that's so funny. With the Bar Mitzvah movie and Joe Silver with the circumcision.
It's so great. We ducked in there when Michigan, it was playing at the mall. And it was, we loved to go to movies. As a kid, I was always at the movies. But we ducked into that thing, not having seen Jaws yet, not having seen Close Encounters or Goodbye Girl. Richard Dreyfuss, The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz, just a great film.
So there's another one. You got me now. Obscure great comedies. The Night They Raided Minsky's. Did you ever see that movie?
Of course I did. Yeah. Great. Gig Young.
The Night They Raided Minsky's was about vaudeville or on the Lower East Side in the Yiddish sort of theater back, I guess, in the 30s in vaudeville. And they filmed it in the Intermedia Theater. And the Intermedia Theater is on 2nd Avenue in the Lower East Side.
I did Richard II there with William Hurt.
Oh, by the way, that's one of my favorite histories of Shakespeare. The last scene when he's alone, Richard II, and that great monologue when he's in prison. Forget about it. It's like
when he foretells what's going to happen. Henry IV, he tells he can see a boy king. Really interesting. A boy king who he's too young to become king, and it's fun and playing and the conflict, and he doesn't know how to do any of it. But then when he ages, when he's left at the end of the play, he has that monologue. He attains wisdom when he's in prison,
right? And
he realizes what he learned, what he had. I think Shakespeare bashing on being a child king, you know, Bushy and Bagot
and Green,
and Green,
Well, I always thought that was like a pre-Hamlet moment. Like he's okay. I wrote this. I can do Hamlet now. I guess it would qualify as a history play because it precedes Henry IV and everything else. But going back to the Intermedia Theater where you had that great experience, I also had a great theatrical experience there because I was the understudy and assistant stage manager, which was the equity kind of category at that time. It's how I got the card for a play that no one will ever see. Again, called Goodnight Grandpa. And somehow they managed to get Milton Berle out from California to star in this play at the Intermedia Theater. So immediately, I just said, Milton, I love you. I'm your slave. I'm here for you, whatever you need. So we did this play. Eventually, they fired the guy who I was understudying, and I got to do a couple performances of the play with Milton Berle.
Oh, that's great.
And I would direct Milton. I would say, Billy, come back to the hotel. I need to work on the thing, you know, the scene, because he had trouble with the memorization. So I would just direct him in the hotel room. And I'll never forget, he had a famous reputation for having a huge schlong, and he bragged about all the women he'd ever, you know, had, including, you know, the roster of 20th Century Fox, pretty much, in a way that he would have been, the Me Too movement would have buried him so many. He's lucky he died when he did. And so his dick's like showing between his bathrobe, and he's made sandwiches. And I turned to him and I go, Milton, put it away. I got you beat. And he looked at me and he said, you might think about stand-up comedy. After I just said that to him, just put it away, you know. So we do the play. It closes. And that was my Intermedia experience. One lesson I learned from show business is the play was terrible. But Milton, knowing that it was terrible, would stay on stage and entertain the audience for like another 40 minutes. So those people had a good time.
So they got their money's worth.
They got their, and I felt like, okay, that's the responsibility of stardom. If I ever am fortunate to get to that level, the debt is from you to the audience, not from the audience to you. And I really saw that with Milton there, you know, when the play's over and he goes, okay, I'm going to tell some jokes. So anyway, the play closes, I move to LA, I start doing stand-up comedy. And then years later, I make this movie. You know, years later, you're in it. You're there, the solar opposite.
98, 97, when we do that?
Yeah, 97. I got it in the theaters commercially in 98, and I played here at the Laemmle's in LA, and finally through just sheer viciousness on my part, because I just felt like if I don't get this in theaters commercially, it's a fucking waste. I just will hate myself. I can't take that. The battle for me just started after I finished the movie in my own mind, especially looking backwards. Well, finally, I got a play date with Pacific Theaters in New York. Now, Pacific Theaters owned a complex of theaters called the Village East, which is on 2nd Avenue. And they said, well, all right, Bill, we'll give you a week in the Village East. Janet Maslin reviewed the friggin' movie because I assaulted her at Sundance when I wasn't even there. I said, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I saw her and she's talking to Michael Moore, and I go, do you know about Soul Dance? And she goes, what's Soul Dance? I go, it's the most exclusive film festival in Park City. Only one movie got in, and it was mine. And I handed her the video cassette. And then and that was just because I crashed into the press room, for which I did not have credentials, because the movie sadly was not included in Sundance, which was for me kind of devastating, because I felt like that's where they're really ready to buy these kind of movies in America. Another day goes by, I'm back there again. I see her again. And finally I go, Janet, because she'd introduced me. I said, if you want to talk to me, just come up to me. But this circling around, trying to make your move, it's not working. Well, she smiled. Maybe this guy's out of his mind. You know, he's a showbiz crazy, which there's some truth to it. I've got a little Rupert Pupkin in me. I know it. It's a little bit in there. I can't help it. It's there. Well, finally, I get this play date in New York. And I said to the press person, you know, whatever, I said, just get it to Janet Maslin. She reviews the movie in the New York Times. She was the top reviewer. She wrote a very nice thing. She says, I thought this guy was insane. Fortunately, his passion was justified by this movie. Anyway, I get this week at the Village East. I walk up there because I always would do Q&J, question and jokes. I walk up to the theater, and I'd gone to film school around the corner at NYU back when I lived in New York. It's the Intermedia Theater. It had been converted and divided up into like 5-plex or something. And the smallest plex, like it was a railroad car apartment, was where they put the Solar
Sure.
opposite. So I felt like I came full circle between the Intermedia and then the Solar opposite. And what I could not plan was that the Yankees got to the World Series that year, and the movie was in the fall, and it was like World Series week in New York. And but that's the Solar, Intermedia, Richard the
Great old theater, classic old theater. Yeah.
Do you get down to the city much?
Yeah, I mean, we have a place in the city, and when I'm there. But this year, I commuted a lot. I got this house. It was about 2-3 years ago, and I said, I gotta own. We were renting in New York City. We'd come from Michigan. I said, I gotta own something. So I started looking at houses and some land up here, and literally found a place for $98,000 with 14 acres.
Whoa!
It wasn't okay in the winter. It was a hunting place. So, we put some insulation in and some radiators in, and I found myself just wanting to be here. And if I have a call in the city after 8:30 or 9, I'll just drive down, and I'm 100 miles away. I'll commute. I'd rather commute. This year, I probably spent a couple weeks from August until just last week in the city. A lot of it was commuting. My work would be 1 day, 3 days an episode. So a lot of commuting, but we have a place on the Upper West Side that we really love. And, we love going to plays and we love going to movies, and we're a block from the 72nd station where you're an express to Broadway. And our favorite theater is the Regal 13 on Broadway, because the Theater 13 is the sound system is fantastic. And it's this great theater, and there's never anybody there. We really, really like.
Now, is that the one at Lincoln, across from Lincoln Center on 66?
No, that's the Lincoln Center. Those are okay theaters, but we like the kind where you can actually lay back and move up the arm. We like the whole idea of a Barcalounger experience, but we can't do it. We miss it. Probably what you were saying right at the top is people want to go to the movies. Yeah. We want to go to the movies. I think that's probably what we miss the most. That and my grandkids.
Well, I used to live on 70th Street in Amsterdam, the Chalfonte Hotel, which that was
really?
That's where my one and only apartment was in New York. I have a memory of walking down Broadway with this girl who I was studying acting with. I studied with Stella Adler and Jack Garfien. Those were my two.
Wow.
Jack just
great teachers.
I'll never forget. I was walking down the street one night with this girl from my acting class. We were holding hands. I was carrying her. We were laughing and joking, and walking up the street towards me was Elia Kazan, and I'm an acting student, and I just dropped the girl, like a face in the crowd, just like, this is my dream. This is why I'm in New York, to be in this soup of everything I'd fantasized about the fervent years, and there he is, Elia Kazan, and Mr. Kazan, I love you, and he had known my grandfather. I'd mentioned him, and he was really nice, and then he was smiling because he saw the girl was all over me. That's like one of my, the Milton Berle and the little Elia Kazan.
I would have loved to have met him.
Yeah. One of the ironies of Hollywood is they castigated him, I believe, unfairly, but any of those people that had ignored him, if they had gotten a call, listen, we're doing a movie about the docks in New Jersey. We don't know the title. It's on the waterfront. Who's directing? Kazan. They're there in a second. They'd have been there in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And was it over the McCarthy thing? Was it over? Is that what it was?
Yes.
He also had some other elements to him that were.
Yeah. Well, we don't get Jesus. The geniuses aren't also Jesus Christ. You got to kind of take what you get. But he was unfair. I believe he was he was a young, in the fervent years, they had, in the group theater and the social causes of the moment, capitalism failing all around them. Many of them were attracted to this socialist dream. and communism, for whatever it was worth, had some appeal, and there were people, who were members of this party. It was an alternative to capitalism, which was really failing in the Depression, and these people wanted to do something meaningful in the theater, and he was part of that. But later, he was turned off by it, the Soviet pact, just so many things. And I think he had resentment towards that affiliation. And when he got called, and he had this huge career in an incredibly difficult moment, he mentioned some names, and nobody ever forgave him for it.
Yeah, he named some names.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I remember working with Jason Robards, and I said, I know you're off for several hours. I got some movies if you want to watch them. And he said, what do you got? And I said, 10 Commandments. And he said, Heston, that prick, turned in 400. And I said, 400? He goes, yeah, during the McCarthy era, he turned in 400 people. I was like, and there was divide within Hollywood over that. Oof.
There's a great book about it called Naming Names. I see it. Victor Navosky wrote it, and I don't know what the future foretells, but I just want to.
Boy, I don't know. It's grim. It's grim as far as, it's grim. The American theater is particularly grim. And everybody's turning to the government to bail out the American theater like it was working already. Mm-hmm. The American theater, if you look at the slate of Broadway musicals that are all movies, you can't really feel that the American theater is working. Average age across the country for theaters, 55. And now everybody's going to the government and saying, bail us out. But the downside of that is if the government bails you out and you continue to get your money from the NEA, they're going to censor you. They're going to say we need to play about this and it needs to be about that. And every politically correct thing's going to come your way. And nobody's going to be able to write from their heart. It's all going to be manufactured theater to appeal to the government who's bailed you out. So, the worst thing you can have is interference artistically. Mm-hmm. Keith Richards threw a knife at a producer who decided he had a better way for Keith to, play a song. In the artistic world, it's just best if, like you, a solar opposite. I know it may have been disappointing for you that it didn't get into maybe Sundance or wasn't a big financial hit, but that was your film. And it was your film right down to the where you had final cut. Mm-hmm. You wrote it, you directed it, you had final cut, you released it. I had that with Jeff's movie, and that experience is thrilling. The best experience you can have. Yeah. It'd be very difficult for the American theater not only to get audience back in because the average age is so high that even if they have been inoculated, with the cure or whatever the vaccine is, how do we get them back in? And is that going to grow? I think we really learned that we're not essential in the American theater. We're just not an essential service, and certainly not in the regional theaters. And I have a theater in Sacramento I founded, right. And we're in trouble. We're trying to get by on the money that the government will Band-Aid through. But, we counted on audiences shoulder to shoulder. And I don't know how that's going to come back. I think there will be a boom, just like the Roaring 20s. After the last pandemic, everything exploded. That's right. Where you see so many young people out. New music, everything that slammed into that. People were spending and buying and drinking and dancing and, everything took off. It's going to happen again, but we didn't have TV then. So the theater was essential. It was essential for young people to go to the theater. And now I don't know how that's going to rebound. And there's no professional theater for kids. The NEA put out a study that said that people have decided by the age of 10 if they're going to continue to go into the theater. They've been taken to a play or a high school play, which is probably bad. But by 10, and yet nobody's been focusing on how to make our American youth respond to not only theater, but all the arts. They pull it away, and then we can't afford, because they can only pay maybe $5, $6 at the most for a ticket per student at the school. You can't get professionals to them. So kids are not growing up trusting the theater. They're not going to come roaring back in to see the plays, and they can't afford them. And the older people that have been struggling, they can't afford to go pay $200 for a ticket for two people. So I don't think we could be in a worse situation. And all the arts groups like Americans for the Arts, they all want to lobby Washington. And it literally like saying, do you really want to go bank all of our artistic future in America on a government with what will be a multi-trillion-dollar deficit? And the National Endowment for the Arts is going to start saying, we want plays about this, about that, all inclusive, which is great. And it's important if the writers are writing that. But now the writers like Arthur Miller and those guys that those playwrights that we had that were still doing their plays 50 and 100 years later, I don't know where they're going to come from if they don't see it. Neil, Arthur Miller, Lanford Wilson, those guys all grew up going to the theater. Right. And seeing good theater. They toured back then. You could be from a small town in Kansas and go to the biggest theater over and see, Victor Jory and Olivia de Havilland touring in some play. We took the movie stars to them. Now they can go see a Disney musical or a Broadway musical, but you're not seeing straight plays. No. They're not getting produced in the region. So the American theater is in a lot of trouble. And although we're going to want to go when it comes back, it's going to be difficult to get shoulder to shoulder in those tiny theaters that as well as I do. And
your career as an actor started in the regions, basically at Louisville. I mean, that was I don't even know if it still exists. I haven't even heard much about it.
Louisville's there. It's going to struggle coming on. I went Tennessee, my route, because I wanted to play ball. I was very open to the minor league system, the major league system. So I was in college at East Tennessee State University where I went to play baseball. I didn't end up playing there, but ended up being a theater guy and a theater star. At the school. I was, got scholarship offers and won awards and really built my confidence there. And then I did summer stock in Vermont and then went to Louisville, Kentucky as an apprentice, and then was invited back to be in the company and got my equity card the very next season. That experience working with Chris Cooper and Kathy Bates and people like that, we were all in our 20s and early 30s, and that minor league feel in the regions was a lot. And then I went to New York. From there, I got flown to New York from Kentucky by Ethel Wynant to audition for Saturday Night Live. I didn't get Saturday Night Live, but I got a movie and a play my first week. Went to the Long Wharf and did the play. Then the next job I had was the Mark Taper Forum. So within a year, I did Actors Theater Louisville, Long Wharf Theater, Mark Taper Forum. And the 35 plays that I did in the regions really allowed for me to get the bat out. It allowed for me to, not only that, the tutelage of these old pros that could tell you, give you shortcuts or help remind you of things that you could do better. That experience you get in the regionals without being in the light of New York and LA, where you can see actors petrified that the New York Times are there. That you can see the actors on stage who walk out on stage and their mind is on that light. Unless you've had a chance to really get the bat out, it's tough. And the actors that came out of just that program and the writers, Robert Shankin and Beth Henley and Marcia Norman and Cooper, and being a part of that, we won the Tony for the best regional theater when I was down there. That experience, learning, growing wise, superior to anything else I faced after.
I'm kind of jealous as you describe your experience in the regions out there and the brutality of New York, okay, knock on doors, here's my resume, knock on doors, got to get an agent, knock on doors. So it's just like
those experiences you can't really do when you're thinking, I've got to get an agent and I got to do this and I got to do that. It's really hard to have the comfort to take risks when the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
But a place like Louisville, even though the stakes are high because you're the best regional theater in America, they're not so high because the industry isn't looming. You're not performing unless you're in the New Play Festival. That gets a little bit squirrely maybe because NBC is going to fly somebody down to headhunt for Saturday Night Live. You can feel that a little bit, but only over a weekend in March. The rest of the time you're doing Cyrano de Bergerac and Three Musketeers and Shakespeare and one acts, and you're upstairs and you're downstairs, and with readings and everything. I think John Jory, who ran the theater, said they produced 100 plays in a year for readings and productions, and the 2 theaters and a lot of the short 10-minute plays we would do. It was we were just banging them out and growing and learning. And, it was really, really fun.
Sounds it. I remember when I was in New York and I was in acting schools. I remember I had a car, I kept it in Westchester, and I made appointments to audition as many regional theaters as I could. I mean, I just got in my car.
That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do.
And the pictures, can I be down Wednesday on the 3rd of May? I'll be there. Okay, be here at 4 o'clock. All right, I do my 2 minutes. See you, thanks.
And would you have a monologue? Did you do a monologue?
Yeah, like 2 monologues in my suitcase. I don't know, like a traveling salesman. I don't even remember. I do have this recollection. I remember John Putch, who was in the movie, The Solar Opposite.
Yeah.
His mother was Maureen Stapleton, Archie from famous, out of the New York theater, the whole thing. And his father had a summer theater in the wilds of Pennsylvania. I forget.
My wife performed there. My wife performed at her theater. She did Steel Magnolias a couple of years ago.
Yeah, she would do that. But her husband, Putch, John's father, Putch.
Yeah, that was their theater.
Their theater. He had ran it for years. It was in beautiful woods. The oak. I drove in. Hey, Mr. And he goes, all right, well, what do you got, kid? And I go, well, I don't know what the hell I did, but stupid friggin' monologues. And you see the pictures of people like you recognize from TV had come and done those shows. And I wanted that experience, that you had. Then I just sort of drifted into stand-up comedy.
They had a theater festival in my second year at East Tennessee State, which was my last year. I went to the Southeastern Theater Conference, and they have theater conferences, and you go and, now the theater in Sacramento, we send somebody every year and they got to sit through 500 monologues. You got 1 minute, you do a monologue. If you get a call back, you have to have another monologue and a song. You might be able to get away with the song at the audition. I did not get very far into my song before they cut me off and said next. Yeah. But I did get 13 callbacks, and I got Louisville, and I got the Green Mountain Guild in Vermont with their children's theater, which was the first job I was ever paid for. So, it was a perfect place for me because I was able to get on stage right away as a freshman. A lot of schools you can't get on stage till your 3rd or 4th year or master's degree. So it was great for me to help get the bat out. I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing, but the teacher, I went to this guy and I said, Bud Frank, and I said, I think this is what I want to do. And I'd done one play and I always knew I wanted to do it, but knew when I stood out in that production. And then I said, I want to learn, I need a process. So I want a one-on-one class with you, and I'll do whatever you want. And you teach me a process on how to approach auditions and performing and all that stuff. And he broke out the Stanislavski stuff, Sonia Moore's book. He took me through a year of the Stanislavski system, and I was trained, and he was an expert in it. And I had 9 months one-on-one. And that changed me so much as an actor, not in New York, not in LA, not in Chicago, not in London, not with Stella Adler or somebody else. There are opportunities to grow regionally. I taught at Michigan State a couple of years ago, and even the alumni, they want everybody to go to LA or New York so they can make it and then come back and bring their money back as an alumnus to Michigan State. And I could not impress upon the film and theater department that the route isn't to New York or LA necessarily. It's not. If you're from those areas, that might be the place you want to go. But it's not the route. You got to go do the minor league system. You got to learn that you can't be late. You got to learn to hit your mark. You got to learn to say your lines a certain way. You got to learn to take direction and not be hurt personally. You got to be able to take not getting cast and not have it crush you. And the regional theater is the best place to go, but we don't let these kids go there. We send them to New York or LA, and not the Cincinnati Playhouse, not Actors Theater Louisville, not Denver Theater Center, not, smaller theaters in Milwaukee and the Alley. Those are the places where the great playwrights came through and had their stuff done. So don't know why it wouldn't be for the actors as well. It's really an important route.
So much is corrupted by the fame game. That's what we've seen in the last 4 years on awful display, is this corruption of what success is in the personification of Trump. It's false idolatry of fame as what success is.
Yeah. Well, you see it, especially, you know, it's just, it has that awkward moment with people when they recognize you and they have I'm married to Melissa Gilbert. She's an icon, truly a true icon that people have known and grew up with, emotionally attached themselves to her with that show. Most of my stuff is usually like solar opposite of people going, what an idiot. What a dink. This guy's just a dink, which are my favorite parts. She actually plays characters that are the fiber of American, she played Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Right.
When they react to her and other people, there is that surreal thing. And then going into Trump would be like, you got to be kidding me. There's nothing magical about this guy. He's a game show host. Yeah. He doesn't even share heart or move you anywhere. You're just attracted to him. Monty Hall could have run for president for all these guys and would have got elected just based on his celebrity. So it is a problem, and it's given too much weight. And certainly in his case, he wasn't able to prove he was the guy. He had a shot.
Yeah, Schwarzenegger, celebrity, and Schwarzenegger, Ronald Reagan, without celebrity, they don't get close to these situations or opportunities.
No, because they're a celebrity. And you know what? A lot of it's about the political, says a lot about the political system, and that so many Americans don't trust it enough. They would elect a guy with no experience.
Right.
And, had we not had the pandemic to show that side, or a war to show that side of what he didn't know, he would have been elected for another 4 years. Easily, just based on the people felt like he was doing a good job with the economy.
Right.
Unable to handle humanitarian, foreign, it was cut all foreign off, America first, build a wall, all of that stuff. They were going to overlook it until he showed that he couldn't handle a disaster. And you got to be able to handle a disaster. I think Cuomo this summer was just, I don't know his politics all that well, even though he's the governor of New York. I live in New York. His talking to us every day and telling us what was going on was invaluable. And it really, I think, helped Trump not get elected as things got worse in his denial. People ended up just saying, no, we need someone that actually is ready to handle a pandemic or a disaster. Yeah. He just couldn't do it. No. And he'd still be there. And the fact that he can maybe come back again after trying to overturn the election falsely, and the lies he told, it's mind-boggling to me.
He bragged about being the best president for blacks since Lincoln, and my response was, the only Civil War president you resembled was Jefferson Davis. Yeah. That's about it.
Look, Andrew Jackson. This guy's Andrew Jackson. Just wipe him out.
I had a really interesting year at the beginning of 20 because I went to Iowa for the caucuses. I called it the caucus.
Yeah, I know that. You went and helped Biden.
Well, no, I just covered it. I did a bunch of podcasts with Buttigieg, Biden.
That helped. That's what I mean. You helped. You use your voice. That made sure a lot of people went in the right direction. I love that you use your voice through this. You helped. Whether you think you helped or not, going to interviewing those guys and putting the word out for anybody sensible that might be listening that this guy's a criminal and can't be there. Yeah. You did a lot, Billy.
Oh, thanks. It was fun. I love the Americana. That's part of what's underlying your love of the regions is it's the fresh air of America.
We should really look hard at music and garage band music and with art and theater and try to inspire those people, the young people especially, how to make their own movies and how to tell their own stories without the bullshit. And the bullshit is, it's not who you know. You don't need a lot of money. And the script doesn't need to be rewritten 10 times. The process of getting good at film used to be only in New York and LA, and for those people that worked their way into it. There was no real way to learn it. And that's what we need to adjust. We need to go back to the young filmmakers that think that they want to finish school and then go to a major center and become famous. But they missed the 100 songs that the Beatles wrote before Please Please Me made the charts. 100 songs John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote that sucked before they figured out their process. And too many people just, they're looking for that lotto ticket mentality. If I could just get that to turn, but they don't pay their dues. I started that theater in Sacramento, not just because I felt the key to the survival of American theater was feed the guppies and then give them a place to come when they get older, but also so I would get better. I didn't want to just audition and do a TV show and then go to the next one. Where was I going to learn to direct and produce? And that experience of having my own theater allowed for me to be a director and a producer, which has sustained me through at least half my career. So, yeah, I'm a big believer in that being the new place to go.
And you have the luxury of failing and then moving on. I went over 4. So what? Next. Fail.
We're in a business of you win a few, you lose 14.
Right.
Being able to deal with success is a problem, and it can have issues, mostly personal. But the idea of dealing with the not having success in a business where it's really hard to get success, you got to muscle up. And if you don't have that, if you have one shot on Broadway and you haven't done anything else and it fails, you may not come back. Or you have one shot, you're out of college, I'm going to get a movie and that's going to do it. Well, that doesn't necessarily give you longevity. Whereas if you've performed classicals, you've done Shakespeare, you've done drama, you've done comedy, you've done all of that and had good and bad experiences, you tend to get better at it. Just like cooking a meal. Yeah. At first you're like, I don't know, this is so much. You cook that same meal 20 times. By the end, you're going to be like this. Yet people go to New York and get that first meal and they never figure it out.
Yeah.
They never figure out their process.
And you don't get to fail. You don't get to go 0 for 4 and come back, because if you go 0 for 4, you got one night, you're done. That's it. Good night. See you. Maybe never again.
Look, you went to NYU Film School. You went to up at Berkeley. You did plays. You show that you love the passion for creating. Then all of a sudden you count on a whole bunch of other people hiring you or producing your work, and that muscle goes away. Yet you were driven at a young age by something on the inside. An artist is driven by an instinct here. Well, you weren't driven, maybe, I'm sure we all think about fame and notoriety, but you love the process. You love the stand-up. You love to make stuff. You need to be creative, Bill. You're not that guy. You're not an accountant guy. You want to be funny. You want to hold an audience. You found it here, and people are finding it with streaming. And I love listening to you. I love,
Ditto, brother. I love you so much. I swear. I'm going to tell you one story. We were filming, and I was directing, and it's like, I love directing. It was so fun. It was just felt natural to me. But I'll never forget, we were doing a scene, and it was beautiful Allison Mackey. I'm not sure. And we did something, and it just went a little squirrely. And I said, "Oh, cut." And you said to me, "Bill, don't stop. Let me have the experience of the scene. Let me feel it." And that cut, that word, it's just like, it's a little assault on my, you didn't say it, I don't know if in these words, but it's a little bit of an assault on my confidence. And all of our talent sits on confidence. Yeah, I believe. You could take Brando and say, "Marlon, what the fuck are you doing?" It's like, it's, and I'll never forget what you said that. And it was really, I never forgot it. And not that I've had many directorial opportunities since, but that idea that all of our talent sits on this balloon of confidence, and you don't want to do anything ever to kind of destroy that.
You want the win. And I think it would have probably been, knowing me, and I'd say it today. I mean, the other day I was kind of like, please don't cut for a technical reason unless you have to. If the scene is going and we're up and running and maybe there's a little bobble, to go cut, go back, like we can just start on action and go, okay, now start, now go. Wait, camera yelling and go. And it's a little bit like, hey, hang on a minute. I would probably like going, let's this early first take or two, let us try and get through it, fight our way through it, and then we'll technically go fix it. Please don't call cut right when I say my line, and then talk to the DP for 5 minutes, and I think you're cutting because I did it wrong.
Right.
You know, you have to be. I remember directing Glenn Close, and Glenn Close doesn't have any insecurity. She's totally confident.
Mm-hmm.
But she was struggling with a moment, and I wanted a certain moment. And I'd gone to her a couple times, you know, kind of fudging around. I was actually pushing on her, and she was giving me a TV act out, which I was already doing with the camera. I didn't want her to give a glare or do a Glenn Close moment because I was into here. Just she could think about, you know, what clothes she was wearing the next day, and it would have worked just fine. I didn't need for her to be Glenn Closing that moment. It was great. It was truly great, but I couldn't go to Glenn first. I had to go to Rose Byrne, you know, and then take Donovan and make him laugh. And then on my way out of the room, I look at Glenn and Glenn goes, I go, oh, yeah, I'm pushing. Stop acting. And she goes, get out of here, fucker. Right? And she laughs, but she had to say to me, come give me a note at that point. Because if I was going to go in on her again, she was going to start to say, there's one Hall of Famer in the room. And don't come to me first with this few notes because I think that was pretty great. You got to play that dance. And actors' confidence, think about it. You want them to cry. Actors got to think, I'm great. Otherwise, how are they going to emote? How are they going to cry on cue? How are they going to be funny? How are they going to listen without thinking, am I doing it right? When listening is the key to good acting on film. Their minds won't get anywhere. They'll be faced back in their head if you make them self-conscious. So you're absolutely right. And I think, I'm sorry if...
No, it was great. It was great.
With poor etiquette, I was just...
No, it was perfect, Eddie, because you took me aside like, no, it's quiet. It wasn't like I was embarrassed. And I could think of myself, and, you know, I've been like a pinch hitter my whole life in television, you know, but there's times where a director might say something mean or nasty. You're like, oh, God. And I just feel like, okay, at this moment, I don't like acting. I don't think I want to be in this job anymore. This is fucked. I hate it. My confidence feels terrible. And I'm speaking this line and I'm sweating at the same time, or at least I feel I'm sweating. I mean, it's a fucking nightmare.
It is. You can go. It's really, really important. I've seen that happen. And I think that's where you learn to direct. I remember a director directing a guy at an airport, and I'm supposed to be buying a ticket from the guy. And he was just genuinely having a fan freak out moment, and was nervous. The very first time we said it, which happens all the time. You show up, you practice in your room, you come together and they say action, and you do the scene for the first time. It's so easy to get tripped up. It's so easy to be nervous. It's just like everything else. Let me do it a couple of times. One take is really kind of first take or first rehearsal. And this director came up to that actor and said, what are you doing? Do it like you did in the audition.
Oh, God,
I was like, we're stepping outside. I mean, that won't work with me. I said, you just ruined that guy's performance. Now I have to work triple hard to get him to relax and have fun because you just did a horrible bit of direction.
Especially like in television, for someone, my experience has been like, I'm coming in for a day. I'm coming in for 2 days. I'm coming in to do this scene. I just equate to the experience I had in sports, which is pinch hitting. I'm not getting 4 at-bats. I'm getting this 1 at-bat, and maybe I'm going to get 1 pitch that I can really hit. It's like a different discipline because I just don't have the flow of the day.
It's very tough. That's very, very tough. And as a director, you're always looking for those where the actor would create a hiccup or an error for themselves in their process. And most often it's their homework. I will often say to an actor who leaves the audition, if I like them, and they only have a couple of scenes or 1 scene or a few lines, I'll say, don't look at it again. You were great here. If you get it, you were great in the room. You'll be great on the day. Don't make it important. Don't go call everybody in your family. Don't let this become more important than what it is. Because for that character, all they're doing is dropping off the menu and saying, let me know, do you want
He has cancer.
yeah. You want to play him with a patch over your eye and a lip.
He has cancer.
That'll make you feel comfortable. We don't need any of that.
Yeah, the doctor. I've done that a lot.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Oh, man, it's so fun. Timothy, I love you, man. It's so great to see you. I'm just so impressed with everything. And I want to see the Jeff Daniels piece. I'm gonna look for it. I saw where there's some downloadable portals for it.
That's right. We're on pay-per-view, and we're on there. Just search it on your local channel guide. You'll find it. And one of my favorite moments ever, was in Solar Opposite running out of the building after just finding out he didn't have AIDS and getting
Oh yeah. Yes, the tricks fate plays.
getting hit by a guy. I'm
Yeah.
because I don't have bam.
Now, when we were in the mixing studio, where you do the mixing at the end, I couldn't get the sound right where I could feel like I heard a bone break and you knew he was dead. And so we kept layering sound. And finally, the Foley person goes, wait a minute. And they took celery and they went, and then I go, oh, wow, that sounds great. And then all of a sudden it was hilarious when you got the celery snap of a skull being cracked or a bone being broken. Apropos of that moment, I knew I was like, okay, that I forget. It was like in the 45th minute of the movie. So if it was in a theater, I'd go, well, it's starting at 8:15. That means at 9:00, it has to be right around that scene. I would drive up, park. I said, excuse me, I wrote and directed. I just want to see one thing. I'd walk in, crash, the laugh, and then I go, okay.
Yeah.
I'm leaving. See ya.
Just that moment alone. Well,
Just
worked.
for the laugh. Yeah, and you were so funny. And this is a reach out to the world. You got to catch Timmy in this movie. To me, you're just so funny. The scene in the dental office. I trusted her with everything. And he goes, your wife? No, my dental assistant. It's just, you were,
I can drop the IQ down. I can't make it any higher. But I can certainly lower my...
Great. And the most joyous interaction I had in the whole process was with you. And, one thing I've learned in my limited experience is that you can tell when people are good, whether it's acting or the sound or the camera, if they take pressure off. If they put it on, it's generally like, oh God. And if they take it off, and the second you walked into the audition, it was like, oh God, it's this relief. This pressure's coming off of me. And you were just the total.
What you want to do. Jack Nicholson said, and the last thing I'll say here too, I remember, I think it was Rolling Stone or one of those interviews, and he said the star dictates the temperament of the set. And whether it was an actor in a children's show or the lead in the play, if they throw a fit, everybody chills. And if an actor walks on a set and throws a fit, the entire crew gets quiet and everybody walks on eggshells for a little while. The supporting area, third guy down the line, or the guy delivering the newspaper, he throws a fit, he's off the show, he's gone. People are going to mock him. But the lead characters, you have that opportunity to help create an environment so everybody's better. And you learn this in sports. I'm out for the win. I want everyone I do to get a win, and I love going to the gold medal round. But more than likely, you won't get to the gold medal round all the time, but you want to go for the win. What helps that is team effort and team sport and abundant individual personalities. We didn't have that in Field of Dreams. The only time I ever saw Kevin Costner get upset, and he was mad, when he was mad and slammed his trailer door, was when he wanted to work longer and Phil Robinson called it a day. Only time I ever saw Kevin get upset was when he wanted to act past 12 hours. He wanted to go get the scene right. He wanted the win, right? And Kevin's all about that. He's going to try to get the script right, get performance right. He's a good reader of scripts, right? So he really wants the win once he knows he's got that property. And he creates an environment around you. He was great with me. He was great with all the actors. He's not off in a vacuum somewhere. And those movie stars that tell a lot of good movies are generally team driven.
Yeah.
And it's so important that you create an environment where people can be the best. And Spielberg, when I started directing, I think Scorsese, a few other ones, Howard Hawks maybe, they talk about a great setting environment. Their most important job is to create an environment. Mm-hmm. And in that environment, all those artists they go up a notch. John Williams goes to Hall of Fame game. Richard Dreyfuss is the best he's been on. Robert Shaw, all those people, he just makes them all better. Spielberg makes everybody relax. And then those actors probably make them relax too. Yeah. And the actors that generally don't have long careers.
Yeah. Howard Hawks. I've been watching Red River a lot lately. It's my favorite Western of all time.
Howard Hawks, my favorite Howard Hawks quote, a great movie is 3 good scenes and no bad scene. A great movie is 3 good scenes and no bad scenes. And what makes us turn off on a movie is a bad scene or holes in a scene. or something. We just go,
What happened? The logic
Why?
breaks down. Logic of
doesn't make
story.
sense.
Yeah, what is that?
what are they doing? Why would they go in there? Yeah.
Hey, brother, I love you so much.
I love you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
I can't wait to see you in real time.
Me too.
Stay safe, and congratulations on that new show. I will remind everybody that the movie that you directed is called Guest Artist.
Yep, and it's on your hit your search on your remote or your Apple TV, and it's going to be up there. And for life, our second half of our season starts January 27th at 10 o'clock.
Thanks so much, brother. I love you to death.
Love you too,
best.
buddy.
Take
Thanks
care.
for having me.
Anytime.
Bye,
See you, Timmy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There he is, folks. The great Timothy Busfield. A long, beautiful conversation with a great actor, director, my God, producer. He's touched all the bases. Hope you enjoyed. Till next time, namaste, shalom, and yeah, you know the drill. Nama shalom.